Hello, welcome to today's lecture. As we have been discussing the types of drama. So far in the discussion, we have seen that how to write a drama has been dictated by Aristotle earlier. In the last lecture, we discussed the concept of comedy. We saw how comedy is nothing but a light play in nature. It is full of funny and happy incidents. It ends with happiness, right? It is full of energy and we laugh. We love comedy very much. We also discussed the significance of comedy, that comedy is not just for laughing purpose only. The novelist, the dramatist can present a serious issue in the form of a comedy, right? It calls as satirizing, right? And the dramatist makes fun of the serious issue. He handles the serious issue in a comic way. So Aristotle valued comedy very much. We also discussed the definition of comedy. We also discussed the structure of plot in comedy. Then we just got started the concept of tragedy. We saw that Aristotle gave a definition of tragedy, right? We also tried to analyze the given definition by Aristotle. We also saw that tragedy is nothing but an imitation of an action. It is full of action. The atmosphere in a comedy is always serious, right? And comedy is full of action and not of narration. So when we see a tragedy, it creates the feelings of pity and fear in our mind. It is called catharsis. The last lecture we discussed the concept of catharsis, and we saw for a balanced mind, for a balanced personality, the emotions of pity and fear should be, yes, appealed. So we focus today the concept of tragedy. As we know that we are familiar with the word tragedy, right? Tragedy is nothing but sadness, right? So a tragedy is a literary work depicting serious events. Some seriousness is there. The main character, that is the protagonist, is often high ranking and dignified, right? In Shakespearean drama, especially, the main characters are from royal families, maybe the king, queen, prince, princess, or knights. For example, Hamlet, for example, Macbeth, for example, Romeo and Juliet, right? And tragedy generally ends with unhappily. And some characters, especially the protagonist, dies at the end of a tragedy. So tragedy is totally opposite to comedy. As you know that comedy is full of light and happiness. But on the other hand, tragedy is a serious play in nature. Right from the beginning to the end, just seriousness, seriousness, and seriousness is there in the story and in the plot. You don't have a single chance to smile, laugh, right? So tragedy is full of problems, and these problems create a conflict in the story. Right from the beginning to the end of a tragedy, there is problem, problem, and problem, conflict, conflict, and conflict, right? And this conflict, this problem is created by the antagonist, and this conflict is faced by the protagonist. So protagonist is always in a tension, right? Deep thinking. The protagonist is troubled by the antagonist, right? So the protagonist and the most of the characters in a tragedy, they are unhappy, they are frustrated, that they have irritating behavior, right? And all these things create a very sad and unhappy atmosphere in the story. And we also feel the same while watching a tragedy, right? When Hamlet is confused, when Hamlet appeals, he speaks that to be or not to be, that is the question. We feel sad, right? When Hamlet is unhappy, we also feel the same feeling, right? When Lady Macbeth in Macbeth, the drama, right, is mad, we also feel sympathy for Lady Macbeth. In King Lear or in Natasamrat, when Appa Belwarkar cries with pain, we also feel the same feeling, right? So as an audience, we also feel unhappiness and sadness, right? And as we know that tragedy always ends with a sad ending, generally with the death of the protagonist. Macbeth is the best example, Hamlet is the best example, Othello is the best example of tragedy. These tragedies are still today world famous, right? So tragedy has its own significance. In the last lecture, we discussed that in the book that is Poetics, Aristotle gave the instructions how to write a tragedy, how a tragedy should be, right? And we know that the protagonists and the most of the characters are from the high rank family. They are from the royal family. Protagonists or the most of the characters are from royal families, just like king, queen, prince, and princess. Right. So tragedy shows the downfall of these characters. Right. Downfall. Adhogati in Marathi. Right. So it is also called reversal of fortune. The bad luck of these characters. Right. From success to failure. This journey is presented in tragedy. So it is nothing but hamartia, right? Tragedy happens not because of the luck. Tragedy happens because of the personal fault of the character, right? So the character is himself or herself responsible for his or her bad luck. For example, Hamlet got a hamartia overthinking. We discussed yesterday. Macbeth got the hamartia of overambition. King Lear got the hamartia of blind trust. Right. So, because of these personal faults, these characters face their tragedy. Right. If Hamlet had been not suffered by overthinking, there would have been no tragedy of Hamlet. Same is the case with Macbeth. Same is the case with King Lear. Right. So tragedy is nothing but the story of hamartia of a character. Right? So when we see a tragedy, again two feelings are created. When we see a comedy, two feelings are there: happiness and fun. Okay. But as far as tragedy is concerned, two feelings are created in our mind, that is fear and pity. And this leads to the catharsis. Right? What is catharsis then? Catharsis means the purgation of feelings. Right? According to psychology, that our mind is full of positive and negative feelings. Right? Positive feelings like love, cooperation, brotherhood, justice, all these are the positive feelings. But again, negative feelings are also there. There is fear, right? Pity, right? Sense of surprise. These negative feelings should also be properly channelized, properly used, right, at regular intervals, right? Then and then we would have balanced personality, balanced state of mind. So, what is catharsis? When we see a tragedy on the stage, we feel fear. What would happen next? Hamlet is behaving like a mad person. What will happen next? Right? Who killed the father of Hamlet? What will happen next? So we are eager to know what will happen next in the story. Right? When we see Macbeth, right? Macbeth, when tries to kill King Duncan for the throne or power, we are under the feeling of fear what will happen next. When Lady Macbeth becomes mad and commits suicide, we feel fear. Same is the case with at the death of Romeo and Juliet. We feel pity for these characters. We feel pity for Hamlet. Oh, he should not be dead at the end. We feel that, right? At the end of Macbeth, we feel that Macbeth should not be dead at the end. Same is the case with Romeo and Juliet. So the feelings of fear and pity are created in our mind, right? And according to Aristotle, these feelings, channelization means use in our daily life is very essential for our balanced mind, right? So tragedy gives us that chance to channelize, to use the feelings of fear and pity, right? But in modern times, the concept of tragedy is changed by Arthur Miller. As I told you that in the case of Shakespearean dramas, the protagonists, the most of the characters are from high ranked people, high ranked family, from royal family, right? But Arthur Miller presented protagonists and most of the characters from the common class of people. So his heroes are very common. For example, Death of a Salesman. His drama just has the story of a salesman, how he gets dead at the end, right? So it is nothing but a story of a salesman, tragedy of a salesman. So the concept of Shakespearean drama, right, becomes the tradition. Nowadays, we have modern tragedy. Tragedy exposes the plight. Plight means plight, bad situation, and the suffering of humans, who is the character on the stage, right? And as you know that tragedy deals with the sadness, the tragedy highlights the ruination of dynasty, right? Adogati, ruination of dynasty. Dynasty means royal family. So there is a downfall of some royal person. Hamlet was a prince, Macbeth was a king, isn't it? Romeo and Juliet, they are from rich families, right? Othello is from royal family, right? So the downfall is presented through tragedy, right? Again, the tragedy highlights emotional cheating, right? What actually the characters are feeling, but they are doing something opposite, doing something opposite. When Hamlet loves a lady, that lady tries to cheat him. That is emotional betrayal. The mother of Hamlet marries the uncle of Hamlet. That's emotional betrayal. So Hamlet feels cheated. Hamlet is frustrated. Hamlet does not want to trust anybody in the whole world. He feels cheated by his own mother and by his own uncle and finally by his own girlfriend, that is Gertrude. Right? So emotional betrayal is there. Moral setback. Most of the characters are morally corrupt. Right? The uncle of Hamlet is morally corrupt. Macbeth himself is morally corrupt. He corrupts himself in the case of Macbeth to get the power. That's why he murders King Duncan and takes the power of the state. Then personal loss is highlighted by tragedy. There is the death of many characters in tragedy, right? Cheatings are there. The characters don't have peace of mind. They suffer not only the external conflict but also the internal conflict. So personal loss is there. Death and denials. Right? As I told you that tragedy highlights the death, murder, bloodshed, war, right, on the stage. So there are many deaths on the stage. Hamlet deaths. Especially Macbeth, right? There are a series of murders in Macbeth, right? So deaths are highlighted in the tragedy. The tragedy can, when composed and enacted well, can touch your sentiments deeply. It can touch your emotions deeply, and especially the emotions of pity and fear. So tragedy is a very major form of drama, like comedy. It is a play in which a hero and his world begin in a condition of harmony, which disintegrates, leaving by him by the end of the play in a state of isolation. So the difference between a comedy and tragedy is that comedy starts with a problem but ends with a solution. Comedy starts with a problem and ends with a solution. But on the other hand, tragedy starts with a problem and even ends with a problem. Right? So in the case of the comedy, all the problems are solved slowly, right? But in the case of tragedy, problems are not solved at all. They remain at the same. The characters lose their lives, but the problem remains the same. That's it. So the hero suffers right from the beginning to the end of the story. So when the tragedy starts, there is everything seems to be normal. Everything seems to be normal. The hero, his family, his friends, they all look normal, right? As nothing bad would happen in the coming events. But what happens when the rising action comes? The problem starts, right? And the hero starts losing the balance in his life. The problem starts, and the problems are created by the antagonist. Again, the protagonist starts suffering right from the rising action level. And what happens when the problem starts? The hero suffers either from internal conflict or from external conflict. And because of these conflicts, the protagonist, who seems to be balanced, a complete person in the beginning, starts losing his physical and mental balance. Right? And this conflict offers the protagonist sadness, frustration, right, and isolation. And at the end of the tragedy, the conflict also offers the protagonist the death. Right? So tragic plots and tragic heroes and heroines have specific features of their own, which are typical of Shakespearean plays, but can be extended to cover tragedies by other playwrights as well. So that is the difference between a tragedy and a comedy. That's why the tragedy appeals us the most. Let's move towards the elements of tragedy. When we discuss the concept of tragedy, we have to discuss the essential elements like tragic hero, tragic flaw or hamartia, catastrophe, and catharsis. Let's discuss these concepts one by one. What is a tragic hero? As we know that as the tragedy deals with sadness and frustration and loneliness of a character, this character is none other than the hero or the protagonist himself. And the tragedy is nothing but the story of the character. Automatically, it becomes the tragedy of that person, right? So the man of high standard who falls from high position, high rank because of fault, that's flaw that has affected many, right? That is means tragic hero. As we know that In Shakespearean drama, we have a tragic hero, right? Who is from a royal family. That is the protagonist. The tragic hero is neither good or not evil. To start, he's just a normal person. According to Aristotle, a tragic hero should have a character between these two extremes. Means so neither good nor evil, just a common person. Common person in the behavior, right? So a character between these two extremes. These two means neither good or not evil. That of a man who is not preeminently good and just, yet whose misfortune is brought about not by vice, vice means luck, but by some error in the judgment of society. Error in judgment means error in behavior, error in what you say, treatment, error in thinking, right? Like that. What is hamartia then? Let me tell you, the error in judgment means hamartia. That is, error in judgment of Hamlet is what? Overthinking. Macbeth's error of judgment is what? Over ambition, right? Like, so what is a hamartia? Hamartia is nothing but the tragic flaw. The error of great frailty through which the fortunes, means the luck of the hero of a tragedy, are reversed. Reverse means the downfall. Leads to the tragic hero's downfall. The tragedy of the hero happens because of tragic flaw, because of hamartia. Maybe it can be caused by poor judgment, right? The character has no idea what to choose, which step he should have. That's why Hamlet is confused, right? To be or not to be, that is the question. That is the example of poor judgment. So Hamlet is confused, right? So a bad character inherited weakness or any of several other possible causes of error. So it must express itself through a definite action or failure to perform a definite action. So over ambition in nature in Macbeth is the best example of hamartia. We discussed hamartia earlier also. Right? Hamartia means the personal fault of that character. Catastrophe, the conclusion of a tragic play, that is the catastrophe. It is nothing but the final stage in the falling action, that is ending the dramatic conflict, winding up the plot and consisting of the actions that result from the climax. So when a tragedy ends, it brings a catastrophe, right? The feelings of pity and fear, these are created, right? Since it is usually used in connection with tragedy and involves the death of the tragic hero, it is sometimes used to designate an unhappy ending. So the over ambition is bad in Macbeth, that is a catastrophe in Macbeth drama. Overthinking is a catastrophe in Hamlet. We already discussed the concept of catharsis. As you know that our mind is full of bad and good feelings, the bad feelings or let's say the negative feelings, they should also be channelized and tragedy helps us in this regard. So when we watch a tragedy, the feelings of pity and fear, they are channelized, they are just evolved. The audience compare themselves with the characters in the play. So when we watch the tragedy of Hamlet, we feel that what could happen if this happens with our personal life, right? So we take care that we should not behave like Hamlet whenever we have such a similar situation in our life, right? As you know that Hamlet is suffered because of overthinking. So what is our fear? that we should not have overthinking in our personal life. So we can say that a tragedy teaches a lot. Right? In the case of Macbeth, we feel fear, right? That overambition is bad. Ambition is good. Ambition is good, but when we achieve that ambition with honesty and hard work, then that ambition has a positive thing, right? But when we adopt a bad or a wrong path to complete the ambition, it's not an ambition, it becomes an injury. So this happens in the story of Macbeth. So we, as the audience, we compare ourselves with Macbeth, right? And we feel that if we behave like Macbeth, right? If we behave in the sense, if we try to achieve the ambition by adaptation of some evil path, some evil act option, then we would have the same tragedy life of Macbeth. Then we would have the same tragedy life of Hamlet. That's why we try to avoid the problems in their personality, problems like overthinking, overambition. So we keep ourselves from such kind of negative things in our personal life also. That is catharsis, right? So we try to avoid the mistakes done by the characters in their personal lives to avoid bad results. So Hamlet teaches us a lesson that overthinking should be avoided. Macbeth teaches us a lesson that overambition is bad. King Lear teaches us a lesson that blind belief, blind trust is always dangerous. Right? So catharsis is nothing but the teaching of, or let's say the message expressed by the tragedy. We discussed catharsis earlier also. Right? So in short, we can say that a tragic hero and a heroine is usually of high rank, right? It is a person of noble character, exceptional qualities are there, right? But because of some personal fault, all these qualities becomes useless, right? It comes close to achieving fame, happiness, but what he or she wishes. The disaster that befalls him or her is inevitable, unavoidable, either decreed by fate or the result of the character's fatal weakness. So despite of inevitability of the outcome, that character does not accept his or her own destruction without a struggle. That's why conflict is created. Right? So suffering is extreme. See the suffering of Hamlet. See the suffering of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth also. See the suffering of Romeo and Juliet. Right? So all these characters and suffer a lot. Right? And they lose their happiness and or well-being. The suffering and the calamity is the problem, sankat in Marathi. Calamity used extend beyond the protagonist to involve other characters. So the conflict is also affects other characters. Right? So the example we can have that is of Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. So we can have more information on Google regarding Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet. Right. So with this, let's conclude our today's discussion that tragedy is equally important like a comedy. Comedy teaches us or offers us fun and happiness, and on the other hand, a tragedy offers us the feelings of fear and pity. Fun and happiness, right, on one hand, and fear and pity on the other hand. These two types of emotions are equally important for a balanced mind, for a balanced personality. So, according to Aristotle, we should enjoy both the types of drama, that is comedy and tragedy. So, both comedy and tragedy, they have opposite qualities. I hope you have understood the discussion, right? Let's stop over here.